a German spy that blew up ships in Gibraltar and became one of Europe's most dangerous saboteurs, earning the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross. This is the story of Major Fritz Hummel. Friedrich Richard Alexander Hummel was born in Jena, in the German state of Thuringia, on February 8, 1910, the first child of Paul Hummel, a civil engineer, and his wife Flora. His city was an important trading post on the banks of the river Saale, and since he was little, Hummel had been enchanted by the boats that went up and down the water course, starting to aspire to a naval career. In May 1929, shortly after completing his studies, he joined as a cabin boy on a small cargo ship that traveled up the Saale and Elbe rivers, arriving in the great port city of Hamburg, known in Germany as the gates to the world. The financial crisis of that year, however, drove the company into bankruptcy, and after nearly 6 months of unemployment, Hummel took a job as a common sailor, trying to scrape together some money to fulfill his dream of becoming an officer in the Merchant Navy. At the end of July 1930, his efforts paid off, and he secured one of the coveted 40 positions for merchant cadets, serving on the large cargo ship Passat, with which Hummel made extensive sea voyages, twice crossing the Cape Horn to pick up ore in Chile. The ship was sold to Finland in the summer of 1932, and Hummel moved on to other vessels, making several ocean crossings to South America, Africa, Indonesia, China, and Japan. On these trips, Hummel honed his knowledge of different cultures, as well as his proficiency in foreign languages. In April 1933, he joined the police force as a member of the Sturmabteilung, the SA, and seeking to advance his career, he began to study law at the University of Hamburg, specializing in psychology and forensic studies. In September 1936, Hummel managed to enter the forensic expert course at the Charlottenburg Police Institute in Berlin, graduating 6 months later and being made head of the Theft Investigation Bureau in Hamburg. While in that role, on October 28 of that year, Fritz Hummel entered a preparatory course for Army Reserve officers, and after graduation ended up being integrated into the anti-tank battalion of the 20th Infantry Division. Serving under Guderian's 19th Panzer Corps, Fritz Hummel took part in the first act of the Second World War, the invasion of Poland in September of 1939. After the end of that campaign, on November 1st, he was finally commissioned second lieutenant of the reserves. In September 1940, Hummel was discharged from active duty and returned to his police duties at the Sicherheitsdienst, or SD, the SS intelligence service. At the same time, he became aware of a new combat unit that had been carrying out audacious actions behind enemy lines. By 1939, the German military intelligence agency, the Abwehr, had created a small sabotage unit with men fluent in foreign languages to carry out missions in the enemy's rear areas, spreading chaos in their war effort. These men had been used successfully throughout the German campaigns of 1940, taking control of key points of the enemy's defensive structure and demolishing their railways, depots, and lines of communication. Officially established under the ordinary name of Baulehr-Bataillon 800 or Special Construction Battalion 800, the Abwehr's 2nd Department sabotage unit became known worldwide as the Brandenburgers, a reference to the Berlin suburb where their barracks were located. Agents should be agile, able to improvise, imbued with initiative and team spirit, highly competent in foreign languages and in dealing with foreigners, as well as performing tasks that required the utmost rigor of physical preparation, qualities that Fritz Hummel seemed to possess and that made him a strong candidate for recruitment. Being 1.9 meters tall, with excellent physical condition and having an advanced degree of proficiency in other languages, Hummel was recruited into the Brandenburgers in July 1941, going on to receive intensive training in reconnaissance, hand-to-hand combat, precision shooting with German and Allied weapons, infantry tactics, and other specialized training, which included demolition and combat diving. Later known as frogmen, these men were trained to sneak underwater and attach explosives to the hulls of the ships, enemy bases and other structures, using what was still experimental diving equipment. Hummel was one of the first 5 Abwehr agents to complete training and be considered Kampfschwimmer or combat diver, Abwehr in November 1941. The following month, Fritz Hummel was taken to the office of Colonel Wessel Freitag von Loringhofen, commander of Department 2 of the Abwehr, who tasked him with his first mission. He would be sent to Spain under the false identity of a diplomat to take up a post at the German embassy in Madrid. In fact, Lieutenant Hummel was to assume command of Referat 2, or second section of the Abwehr station in Spanish territory. Spain had an openly pro-German government, although it maintained a neutral attitude throughout World War II, becoming a refuge for British merchant shipping, a primary target of the second section's sabotage activities. In addition, another focus of operations for German agents was the Rock of Gibraltar, a British fortress embedded in the southern tip of Spain, which guarded the entrance to the Mediterranean Sea, with the Axis expanding the scope of its operations in that sector, including the increasing number of German U-boats attempting to pass through the strait. Sabotaging Gibraltar's defenses became an all-important activity. Hummel had under his command a team of 7 German agents, men who had a vast network of Spanish contacts that provided them with intelligence and manpower to carry out sabotage actions. In order not to arouse suspicion or create conflicts with the Spanish authorities, Fritz Hummel ordered that all attacks against ships must be carried out with mines containing delay fuses, which would only detonate after the vessels left Spanish ports. Showing determination and agility, Hummel coordinated his first attack as early as January 1942. Using 2 known Spanish contacts known as La Plaza and Juan Dominguez, who managed to hire workers from the docks of Gibraltar, he destroyed a British speedboat anchored in the fortress using an explosive charge. In March, he repeated the attack, this time against 3 vessels moored together. A planted explosive charge detonated with a delay in the middle of the night, setting fire to all 3 boats and driving one of them to the bottom. Throughout the remainder of that year, while spending his days as a well-connected German diplomat in Madrid, taking part in balls and receptions with the city's elite, Hummel maintained a string of sabotage actions against Gibraltar, managing to blow up several of their ammunition stores and fuel depots, always managing to evade his agents from British captivity. In addition to the attacks against the Rock, Hummel's agents carried out several actions against British shipping in the ports of Huelva, Cadiz, Cartagena, Barcelona, and Vigo. In a characteristic action of the Abwehr, in December 1942, 2 agents managed to hide explosives in a cargo of oranges in Seville, which was to be embarked on a British ship in Cadiz. Hours after setting sail, the explosion consumed all of the ship's cargo, seriously damaging it. From February 1943 onwards, Hummel authorized attacks on the Portuguese capital of Lisbon, managing to damage a British freighter docked in the city with explosives. Despite Loringhofen ordering him not to be personally involved in the actions, Hummel sometimes ignored the command and carried out amazing acts of sabotage. Disguised as a fisherman, he would approach British ships at night aboard a small boat, put on his wetsuit, and attach a mine to the hull of the vessel, which would suddenly explode hours later. Beginning in September 1943, after Italy signed an armistice with the Allies, Italian shipping became Hummel's next target. Several Italian merchant ships docked in Spain ended up sabotaged by the Germans, with the use of various artifacts, from time bombs to magnetic mines. But such intense activity became to undermine Fritz Hummel's cover, and Spanish intelligence had already discovered the extent of his operative network. With the tide of the war clearly turning against Germany, Madrid's veiled support for Berlin began to crumble, and in February 1944, after an English ship exploded in the London docks with a time bomb set by Hummel, the Spanish authorities expelled him from the country to avoid problems with the Allies. The German strategic situation that Hummel found at the beginning of 1944 was completely different from the one he had left in December 1941. The Soviets were already advancing against Eastern Europe, the Allies were occupying southern Italy, and the High Command in Berlin was already waiting for an invasion of the French Atlantic coast. The Kriegsmarine had elevated the importance of the Kleinkampfverbände, or small fighting units, which had in the frogmen a large part of their contingent. Due to his vast and unique field experience, in March 1944, Captain Hummel was given command of a combat diving school in Venice, training new saboteurs until August of that year. He was then transferred to Leocommando 7 700, an operational Kriegsmarine frogmen unit, taking over as head of planning and operations, and in this post he would engage in the center of the fighting on the Western Front. On September 17, the Allies launched Operation Market Garden, a major airborne offensive to capture 3 bridges in the Netherlands and clear the way to the heart of Germany. Conquering the first bridge without major problems, the Allies faced stiff resistance at the second objective in Nijmegen. The 2 bridges, 1 road and 1 rail, over the river Waal were defended by the Germans, preventing the arrival of reinforcements for the isolated Anglo-Polish garrison in Arnhem, which was eventually destroyed by the waffen-ss. The harshness of the fighting captured the attention of the world press, and it was not until September 20th that the Allies took the bridges at Nijmegen. In the following days, several attempts to destroy the bridges were made by the Germans, without success, until the responsibility was given to Fritz Hummel. On the afternoon of September 29th, in an action planned and coordinated by him, German frogmen silently approached the bridges and managed to undermine both, and at 5:30 p.m., 2 tremendous explosions shook Nijmegen. The central section of the railway bridge collapsed, and a large hole was dug in the middle of the road bridge. The act of sabotage made headlines worldwide, and the Allied advance was delayed until repairs were made. For this action, Fritz Hummel was awarded the Knight's Cross of the Iron Cross on October 19, 1944, being also promoted to Major of the Reserve. In November, Hummel was given command of the SS sabotage unit on the Western Front, reporting straight to Otto Skorzeny and carrying out missions to destroy Allied infrastructure on the western bank of the River Rhine. With the Third Reich definitely deteriorating in the spring of 1945, his unit was eventually disbanded, and he fled into hiding in the Tyrolean mountains. Disguised, Fritz Hummel remained more than a year on the run from the Allied authorities, until he was arrested by an American patrol in Schwabmünchen, Bavaria, on October 18, 1946. In the following months, he was interrogated intensively about his activities during the war, but according to the CIA report published years later, he cooperated fully with the Americans. Released, Hummel was approached by General Heinhard Gehlen, West Germany's chief of intelligence, to rejoin the service, but declined the offer. After 5 years living in Spain, he returned to Germany in his former profession as a criminal investigator, finally retiring as a chief detective of the Flensburg police in the north of the country. Fritz Hummel, a regular attendee at the meetings of the Knight's Cross Winners Association, passed away on July 10, 1993, being 83 years old.